Today, we're going to talk about how to draw from observation. Now, if we were in class this quarter, we would be watching almost the same slideshow in class and talking about it. So I'm going to kind of walk you through how we would talk about it, even though we're not having a conversation right now. So the objective of this lesson is to get you to learn to focus on what you actually observe or what you see, not what you assume is there, or draw what you see, not what you think you see. For instance, this picture right here. What is this a picture of? If you said a triangle, you're not really correct. This is actually a picture of three Pac-Man-like shaped things, circles, that are all facing each other in such a way that you see a triangle. So if you were going to draw it, you could actually maybe lightly draw a triangle and erase and draw the circles. This is something that's known as negative space. The black circles are the positive space, and this space that is formed around them, the space between other shapes, is negative space. And this can really help us with our drawings. So I have a couple other optical illusions to show you, kind of for fun, and also so that you can see the effect of negative space. So here's two more pictures. The area in the black is the positive space. The area formed between those things is the negative space. So in the first one, you're probably seeing two faces facing each other. And you might say this looks like a vase or a candle holder or something like that in between them. We have positive space and negative space, and you could think about either one as you're drawing, whichever would be easier for you to do. Now over here, how many of you see a woman's face? If you don't, it's over here. So you might think, oh, there's a guy playing his saxophone, but actually here it's the side of her face. These are her eyes, the side of her nose and her mouth, and then her chin is formed in the negative space right here. And then finally, here's another one. How many of you see a face? Looks like maybe a scene from Victorian England with cobblestone streets, but actually the bridge here is suggesting an eye. This kind of suggests an eye over here, the side of her head, forehead up here, chin down here. Negative space is having you see those things. Now, how can your observation skills help you draw? So when you're setting up a still life, you're trying to draw anything from observation, you want to pay attention to a few things. First, what are the main shapes? How do you decide what to draw first? And where's the negative space? And then finally, learning to see shading and shadows. And we're going to go over all these in a little more detail. So here are some shapes that you see. You've got a glue bottle. Say if I asked you to draw a glue bottle, which we did in 5th grade, a lot of you chose glue as one of your objects that you were drawing last year if you had me for your art teacher. And we might have talked a little bit about main shapes. So over here is a simple drawing of the glue bottle. And what kinds of main shapes do you see? I see a rectangle with curved edges. There's a cylinder. And finally, a cone. So those are the main shapes. I would worry about drawing those before I worried about drawing any of these details. And I might not worry about drawing teeny tiny things. Like I might draw the cow's face or the shape here around the Elmers, but I would not probably worry about writing safe, non-toxic, 7.25 fluid ounces or, number one teacher brand over here in the little apple. I would worry about like the orange shape here, this blue shape. I would worry about those main shapes. I wouldn't get every tiny detail if it's not necessary. So now where do you begin? Pictures with food in them are very common things to have in still lifes. So here's something that might actually be a still life. So when you first start, you want to notice maybe which objects are in front, which ones are behind, where these objects touch each other, where the edges and lines are on them. So if you have 4 pieces of fruit here, you have to think, where would I start? I might start with the peach here because it's completely in front. Or I might start with the orange because even though it has a little overlap here where my cursor is, it's still the main part of your picture, and you could easily start in the center and build out from there. So let's say if I did start with the orange, then my next choice would be probably this peach here in front. And I would draw that just barely touching, and then I'll notice too that the top of the shape comes to about the middle of the orange, so that can help me place it on the paper. And then I might draw the apple next, and I'll notice, see where my cursor is. It's touching maybe about 2/3 of the way up the peach, and it comes almost as tall as this, and then it hits over here a little higher up. Still not worrying about the details. Then I could go over here to the banana and see how this also ends about a little higher up than the peach did. And then it comes around this way, and it's almost the same level on here as the peach. The bottoms almost match up. But this side of the banana here almost lines up with the edge of the orange. Now, do you see any negative space here that could help you? I actually see negative space right here, so I could draw this, and I see like a little triangle here. Those are some other ways. We'll talk a little bit more about negative space in the next slide. And then here's some more things. Now, which things should you draw first? If you said this one back here, that would not be a correct one. It's behind everything. If you said the table, that's a good guess, but you might not want to do the table first, because what happens if you say you draw the back of the table, you can't see it. You're not drawing what you're observing. You're drawing what you think is there. And then you'd have to erase the back of the table anyway to put the objects on them. So I would probably start with this pear that's in front. And then I might build on that. And then I might, or maybe I could just draw this line here and then build on that too. That might be another place. And maybe this third or fourth, and then finally this pear in the back last. That's what the order that I would probably tackle this. Now here's negative space. Here's a picture of a chair. If I had you draw this chair, which would probably be a really boring thing to draw, but it has lots of negative space. So if I did, which would not, I would ask you to find some shapes maybe down the legs. So let's say maybe you drew the chair and you're sitting looking at your drawing thinking something looks off. You could ask yourself, well, you know what? Do I see this triangle here in my drawing, just like I do in the chair that's in front of me? Or do I see this trapezoid or this trapezoid? Those are negative spaces, and that could help you adjust your drawing. Now, shading and shadows. So once you've drawn the basic shapes, you've drawn the outlines and probably some of the details, you can start adding shading and shadows. So shading is, remember, what's on the objects. This is the dark areas here, where kind of the light looks like it's from behind on the right here, so things more in the front or on the left are darker. And you might notice things like this and be thinking, oh, this is away from the light. How come that is white there? That's because of something, it's like a reflected light. Don't worry about that too much. Just draw what you observe. But those darker areas and the lighter areas. And remember, we did a project like this last year. If you were in my class, we drew some shapes. So you have a little bit of experience with this. The shadows are what's cast onto the surface. And over here, you'll notice in this painting, this is by the artist Wayne Thiebaud. He paints lots of scenes like this with objects. And if you ever look at his stuff, you notice he doesn't use black for his shadows. He might use dark blue or purple or other colors. So it doesn't have to be black. And sometimes black is a little too dark for shading as well, for shadows as well. Same thing with shading. Maybe a gray or adding purple to something. Or if you're going to use black, use it very lightly. And then finally, drawing from observation is really best when you're doing shadows. Now, if you wanted to make a still life like this, you can, but you would really have to be able to observe that to see where the shadows would be. And then finally, if you want to get better at drawing, you really need to practice. And those of you who think, yeah, I'm pretty decent at drawing already, it's probably because you know that you practice. And if you think, I'm really not good at drawing from observation. Practice. Maybe before you even start the still life project that I'm assigning, maybe just get one object out, practice looking at it and drawing. And if we were in class, we would be doing that, but we're not. So I'm going to trust that you could practice on your own if you think you need to before you start your still life project.